This is All Things Ansys, a podcast from the technical support staff at PADT. Episode 66, updates on the world of Ansys and a discussion about Ansys optiSLang. Greetings to everyone. It's June 26th, and I'm recording this from my home in Phoenix, Arizona. Yes, that Arizona, where we screwed our opening up and gave data to epidemiologists for decades to come on what happens if a small chunk of your population decides they are done with social distancing and then all crowd into a small number of bars and restaurants. What happens? You get a record spread of the spiky ball of death. So I joke a little bit because that's all we can do. The bottom line is here at PADT, we're going to be working from home for quite a while longer. Probably another month more than we thought we would. And hopefully we'll manage the next reemergence a little bit better as a community. We're very, very fortunate to have not had any of our employees or their family members infected. And we continue to operate in our Phoenix or Tempe, Arizona facility, where we have a very reasonable social distancing, and we have all the safety measures in place so our essential employees can work there and do their job from within the confines of our business. The rest of us are work from home, and we're busy filling the pipe of the internet with lots of engineering data. And speaking of flooding bandwidth with nodes and elements, let's talk some about Ansys. This is the 66th podcast. We've had 65 in the bag. And of those, amongst those 65 podcasts, we've had 20,622 downloads. And so we've inched up a little bit in our per episode count. And we're making our way to further more and more people over time. We're also gearing up at PADT for the 2020 R2 release of the Ansys products. That should happen sometime in the second half of July. So stay tuned for episodes talking about what we find there. We're very excited. There's lots of good stuff. It's going to be a great release, fantastic release. Speaking of good stuff with Ansys, instead of talking about what's coming, let's talk about something that's been with us for a little while. Ansys acquired a company called Donardo that had their primary product was a product called optiSLang. And it's a really, really good tool. I haven't had the chance to play with it as much as I'd like. So we asked Josh Stout to join us, who is our in-house expert on the tool. He's the one that's been learning it and using it the most. So we had a virtual sit down to basically have him teach me what this optiSLang tool is all about and why we should care. I want to welcome everybody to a discussion today with one of our support engineers, Josh Stout, about a tool that's been part of the Ansys family as a third-party option for quite some time. It was recently acquired by Ansys. It's called optiSLang. So welcome, Josh.
Well, thank you. Happy to be here.
And we'll get started. I think listeners have met you before on the podcast, so why don't you tell us, who you are and what you do at PADT?
Sure. So I started with PADT last November, so I'm still relatively new face. I was hired on as a systems engineer, so I'm learning lots of system level tools like IcePack and Twin Builder, and now optiSLang, a little bit of other various things, really kind of filling in as needed, picking up some experience with these new and interesting tools.
Yeah, I'll put a plug in for you. You've written some really good blog articles for the PADT blog that have been, I found them useful. And in fact, that's what spawned this discussion is you used, I think you used optiSLang to do a simulation in IcePack. Is that right? Yeah,
exactly. So it had been requested that I sort of showcase some of the features on these tools. And it was, a great learning experience for me. And I'm always happy to, generate some more interest in these tools that are, more specific use cases.
So let's talk a little bit about optiSLang, and I'll admit to everybody, it's one of the tools that I didn't use before I stopped doing simulation. So and I haven't had a chance to really get exposed to it beyond some of the things that you've done. So I'm gonna plead ignorance here and ask some questions, which will hopefully be useful for other folks who aren't aware of it. So there's a lot of tools out there that begin with the word opti. So in a really high level way, what would you say optiSLang is? Is it just an optimization tool, or is it more than that?
It is definitely more than that. I mean, obviously with Opti as part of the name, optimization is a large part of it. I mean, I guess it kind of depends on how you define optimization, right?
Right.
That can take all kinds of different forms. So if we're running with a model in IcePack, like my blog post, maybe you have it parameterized in a way that you want to optimize those parameters specifically. Maybe you have a high-level design point with some manufacturing process associated with it. Maybe you need to optimize your result based on variability of manufacturing processes, something like that. But even more than that aspect of optiSLang, it's also a top-level system tool. So it's great for interfacing between different tools and different systems.
Yeah, stuff that you may have written your own code for or used another tool for in the past, you can kind of hook everything together and do a bunch of runs. That's kind of the way I look at it.
Yeah, exactly. So optiSLang, maybe even its most powerful feature is just the ability to run everything from a single location. And like you said, you can hook them all together. You can link inputs and outputs, and then you can optimize them, of course.
Cool. That's really cool, and it's been pretty well received in the user community by those that do a lot of optimization. I mean, you've learned it recently. I mean, what was the learning curve like? Is this like a simple tool, a moderate tool, or a fairly complex tool you got to buckle down and do some studying on?
Definitely depends on your use cases. There's quite a decent amount of learning material available for it, either through the Ansys Learning Hub or just the help documentation included with the tool itself. There are lots of examples depending on what you're trying to implement. So, whether it's a Fortran code or a Python code, or maybe you're linking it to an interface with an Ansys product, there's probably an example that will show you how to do that in general terms. So like any tool, there's always a little bit of a learning curve, just learning little idiosyncrasies, but it hasn't really been that bad.
Well, and probably a good advice for everybody out there is something that I learned the hard way on older optimization tools is don't start with a 15 parameter multi-physics, maybe a flat plate with a hole in it to come to that obvious solution on how big the hole can be to minimize the mass, right? To get your feet wet in it. It sits within its own interface. Is that correct?
There are a few different ways you can run it. It does have its own interface. Okay. It's kind of a schematic view for different programs that you're using. It also has integrations with Ansys Workbench directly. So there's a module for optiSLang, kind of like there is for mechanical or thermal, those kinds of things. I believe there's also an integration with Microsoft Excel. So if you're running worksheet optimization, optiSLang can sit right inside of Excel. There may be some others that I'm not as familiar with.
Yeah, the team was not the tool was not an Ansys specific tool before the acquisition, so I think it does work with a lot of other solvers, and we have to admit that Excel is the most common simulation tool in the world. So it does everything.
For sure. Yes,
yeah, we use it for everything. That's good to know. So you don't have to, if you're doing something just in mechanical, you can just create a module within the mechanical project page and hook it up to your various mechanical tools. So it's been integrated, which is good to know. It's really good to know. Yeah. So you talked about learning it, the interface. What as you played with it, what's been your favorite aspect of the tool? What's you've gone, wow, that's pretty cool.
I'm always kind of a sucker for visualization. So you can have all the data in the world, but if you can't visualize it in a meaningful way, it doesn't do you a whole lot of good. So optiSLang, one of the ways it does optimization is it generates these things called meta models of optimal prognosis. Okay. And they're basically surfaces of best fit for whatever variables you're working with. Okay. So it has a lot of flexibility as far as visualizing those surfaces in 2-dimensional, 3-dimensional plots. You can change the variables you're using. You can color code it based on the quality of fit, things like that. So really, it's very powerful for letting you identify, where is a good fit, where is a bad fit, How useful is this model actually going to be? Things like that.
That's a really good point, because a lot of times you don't really know what most of the problems that we run into don't have a one solution, right? It's really, sometimes you just want to know how sensitive your model is to certain inputs or certain parameters. So having a visualization tool like that really helps understand that. So it does design of experiments, optimization. I assume from the things you've said that it's also, it doesn't really matter what those things are you're optimizing on, right? It can be multiple physics, multiple goals, you can combine cost, weight, and time of year in your optimization, it sounds like.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. I mean, it's data agnostic. So I mean, it's working off of math, right? So if you have a number, you can optimize it somehow.
Numbers is numbers. Huh.
Yeah.
That's a good way to look at it. Yeah. So if somebody wants to try this out, let me back up a little bit. Have you used the Ansys optimization tool that's just built into mechanical?
I have not used it for optimization. I've used it many years ago for just parametric sweeps.
Yeah, parametric sweeps. Yeah. So that's a fairly basic tool, and I think that's the way most people use it, right? Is they set up a bunch of runs and kick them off, right? So this would be this sounds like you might want to start using optiSLang if you find yourself restricted by that tool. This is definitely something you should look at. Yeah.
Yeah, I would consider it as kind of the next step up. As far as its integration with Ansys Workbench tools like mechanical, I think they're pretty comparable in a lot of ways. optiSLang is going to be a little bit more flexible.
Okay.
But as soon as you move outside of that Workbench environment, I think optiSLang is pretty quickly going to take the lead in feature set.
Good. And it is a separate license, that's correct?
Yes, it is. It's a standalone.
So if somebody wants to take a look at it, what I would recommend, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, it sounds like you could just go ahead and ask whoever you get your answers from for a temp key and try it out. Is that something you would advise?
I believe that's the case, yeah. I mean, we should be able to issue optiSLang keys. We sell them with all the rest of the Ansys products.
There's no special hardware requirements or anything like that, I would imagine.
Nope. As long as you can run the simulations you're trying to optimize, you should be fine.
Okay, cool. And no special knowledge, or you don't have to know any programming languages or anything like that. It's all fairly straightforward. Yeah.
Yeah. That's
cool.
Not necessary by any means, no.
Yeah. I think that it's one of those tools, the more you talk about it, the more I think about it. It's one of those tools where you can use kind of the surface level capabilities and be very productive and find it really useful. But if you take the time to dig inside, there's a lot you can do with it.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, any of these super flexible, customizable tools are going to be similar in that regard, I think.
Yeah, it might be something, if you find yourself writing a lot of Python scripts to do automation and optimization across multiple tools or combine multiple tools, it may be something to take a look at as a better way to do that, a more flexible and a faster way to do that. Yeah. Cool.
And just having an interface built on top of it is worth quite a bit too, I think.
Yeah. If you're putting your data into Excel and then post-processing it there, maybe you should take a look at this. Yeah. Visualize it here. That's cool. Cool. Anything else you think listeners should know about the tool?
I don't think there's anything particularly off the top of my head here.
I think it sounds like you just got to get in and use it. I think, it's not like, a new turbulence model. You got to study a bunch of math and understand it. It sounds like it's just one of those things where, hey, if you want to explore your design space, whether it's optimizing or just understanding sensitivity, this is a much better way to do it than rolling your own or using a less capable tool. So
yeah, I guess one thing that I might add, kind of related to your discussion about how to learn it, is definitely starting small is very valuable, because really these models can get extremely complicated the more variables you have, and the more variables you have, the more runs you need to conduct to get the data you need to build these models. So the more you can cut down your parameter space, the faster you can iterate, faster you can learn, build up from the ground rather than starting from the top.
Yeah. That's a really good point because you could really kind of get a bad feeling about this by digging in too deep, and because it's such a capable tool, you can get lost pretty fast. Mm-hmm. I think the best way for folks to really learn about it, it's on the Ansys website. But the company that Ansys acquired is called Dynardo. And if you just Google Ansys optiSLang, I think that is going to. I'm on. This is live, folks. I'm doing it right here. Yeah. If you just Google Ansys optiSLang and click on it, you'll go to the Ansys website where it's got some really good descriptions of how it integrates with Ansys, especially, and it's kind of presented in a way that you may feel more familiar with. Being an Ansys user. But if you also scroll down a little bit, you'll see the Dynardo.de. It's a German company. Their website is still up, and it's a little bit more technical look at the tool. It's Ansys branded, but I think it's got a little bit more technical look at the tool. And then it looks like there's a couple of really cool videos out there that you should probably check out as well. So I highly encourage it. We're excited about it. Our customers are loving it. So if you are an Ansys customer of PADT's, reach out and talk to us, and we'd love to share with you. And Josh is here to help you figure it out. And if you're unfortunate to not be an Ansys customer, whoever you do get your Ansys from, although they may not be as easy to work with and enjoyable to work with as Josh, they will help you as well. So I really thank you for educating me on this. I appreciate you taking out the time. And it's Friday, so have a great weekend out there.
Thank you. You too. Stay safe.
We'll talk to you soon.
Okay. Bye.
Bye.
As mentioned, we really recommend that you look it up on the web, watch some of the videos that are available out there, or even better, reach out to your Ansys provider and get a temp key and give it a try. I think it'll change the way you use simulation to drive your product design. A lot of things that we've wanted to do in the past, we just kind of say, it's too much work, and we go ahead and use whatever tools we have on hand. But if you have optiSLang on hand, you can do a lot more. It's very powerful, and we're just getting started with it. PADT, we hope to learn more and share more in the future. Which brings us to everyone's favorite part of the All Things Ansys podcast, where I awkwardly read a commercial. Please consider PADT as your Ansys supplier if you are in the Southwestern U.S. and for simulation consulting and customization. We are also just as good at additive manufacturing and product development. Give us a try. We love what we do, and our customers tell us that we are good at it. All right, that brings us to the Ansys stock, which is still doing quite well. It's sitting at $283.08 here on Friday, June 26th of 2020. So it was a down day. It was down over 1% today. It looks like that end of the week type of correction that often happens with the stock market. But in the past month, it's closed as high as $290 a share and as low as $270. So it's been bouncing around in that $270 to $290 range for about 30 days here. Year to date, though, the good news is that the Ansys stock, ANSS, is up 10.16%. And as a measure of how the general market is doing, the S&P 500 is now down 6.98% since January 1st. So a good investment. In Ansys news, there's really no good news to report, but what I will report in this part of our podcast is two contests that I think people should be aware of. The first one is newly announced, and the other one has been around for a little while, but I want to talk about it again just to make sure everybody knows. So the first one is that Ansys is the simulation sponsor, the exclusive, I believe, simulation sponsor for something called the Indy Autonomous Challenge. It's a student race at the famous Indianapolis Speedway, and you basically build and run a self-driving car, loops around the track. They're saying over 200 miles per hour, totally self-driving. And if you're a participant in that race, part of the sponsorship package is that you get full access to the Ansys autonomous suite of tools. And this includes the ability to train your vision systems using that tool. It's pretty cool. Definitely a must-have and a competitive advantage if you're going to compete in that, or if you just heard about it and you want to compete about it, do check it out. Just take a look for what's the official title of it? The Indy Autonomous Challenge. It's going to be, the race itself is going to be held on October 23rd, 2021. So you've got more than a year to get ready for the race. So do check that out. The second contest we did talk about before because it came out during Simulation World, and that's something called the Art of Simulation Contest. It's pretty cool, and we would really like to see lots of people submit their models. Basically, take a cool, or save a cool picture of a cool simulation and send it in, and hopefully you will win. If nothing else, it's great to share the kind of work you've done and the kind of the beauty sometimes of Ansys models of various kinds. When it comes to PADT news, we got nothing really worth talking about in that realm. So let's move on to publications and the Ansys blog. There were 3 articles that I selected to talk about. The first I really like. It's called How to Improve Product Sound with Ansys Acoustic Simulations. So a lot of people don't realize how much acoustics you can do with Ansys. It's pretty comprehensive, both on the fluent side and on the mechanical side. And what's even better is some of the newer tools that Ansys have acquired let you do even more, including even hearing what the sound you've calculated with simulation actually sounds like. It's pretty neat stuff. So check that article out. Another one that I thought was worth sharing is that the blog republished, actually not republished, but updated a bunch of information on the master's degree in numerical simulation from the University of Madrid. This is an online class, or classes, that you can take to get your master's degree in numerical simulation from the famed Spanish university. And it's pretty cool. There's a lot of good information there. What exactly is the course about and what does it mean? So if you're thinking about getting a master's degree, and since we're all online now, maybe looking at Madrid is the way to go. And as far as I'm concerned, for the next topic, 5G cannot get here fast enough. And so I was excited to read the article, 5G Benefits That Will Change the World. It's a post that starts actually with some interesting poll results on what people think they know about 5G. Most of it's wrong, but it's kind of an interesting look also at what countries think about 5G. Some countries think that it's going to be a game changer, and some think it's overhyped. I kind of tried to guess before I read it which ones would feel which way, and I was pretty close. I was pretty close. Who are the sarcastic naysayers and who are the enthusiastic endorsers? No matter how you feel about it, the article then goes into the tangible benefits, and it is coming. You might as well learn as much as you can about 5G before it's here. On the PADT blog, our very own Alex Christian published a very informative and technical, basically a PowerPoint. If you've ever read his articles before, what he likes to do is do some pretty good PowerPoints with a lot of details and really good information. We just save that as a PDF and share that. It's a great way to share information on how to do stuff in Ansys. And this one is called Alternating Stresses in Ansys Mechanical. Part 1 is on principal stresses. So if you've ever done that kind of calculation for a dynamic simulation, you know that there's square roots of numbers. And when you do that, squares and square roots, and when you do that, you lose sign. And so this talks a lot about some intricacies of how to get the accurate numbers for these stress values when you have alternating stresses. Upcoming events. That's the next part of our podcast here. And we actually, Trevor was very good and got all 3 of them listed on our website, so I can talk about all of them today. They're all in July. Then the first one is next week on July 1st, and it's called, actually the week that this podcast comes out, and it's called Revolutionizing the Way Data Moves Through Space with Ansys Simulation. And we're going to talk about using sophisticated high-frequency electromagnetic antennas and horns and things, and how to simulate those with our customer. And it's a really cool look at an important part of satellites and spacecraft is how to talk to each other or talk to Earth. The next one is the beginning of our updates on 2020 R2. It's going to be July 15th, and it's the mechanical update. That's always a good one. There's always neat stuff, and it's good to get through it. And then finally, the last one is going to be from visualization to simulation, digital anatomy solutions for 3D printing. So this one is not an Ansys webinar, but it is something that you might be interested in if you're especially in the medical space. So it's about how we can use all sorts of different tools, and we use the word simulation, but we're really talking about physical simulation, including the new materials from Stratasys to print very lifelike versions of human parts or the whole human body, even if we wanted to. And that's on the 22nd. So, talking with our customer about how data moves, then talking about the mechanical update, and then finally some stuff about 3D printing and human bodies. The only other event that we have on the agenda right now, we may add some more as we get further into the month, is I will be hosting the third Arizona Tech Business Networking Roundtable. It's basically an online virtual event where we randomly assign people to rooms and we make them talk to each other and meet each other. So if you're interested in networking with other tech people, we've had students on, we've had engineers, we have salespeople, we've got researchers, we've got people from academia. We had, I think, 106 people signed up for the one earlier this week, and we actually had over 75 that were able to make it. It's a really fun event, so I highly recommend that. Go to padtinc.com/network to learn more about that event. And please join us. And with that, I'm going to finish up our podcast. I want to thank you, everybody, for being such loyal listeners and always giving us great feedback. We really appreciate that. It makes it worth the effort to put this podcast together. Don't forget to subscribe to our newsletter at www.padtinc.com/opt-in and spread the word about PADT, about the podcast, and about Ansys simulation. And don't ever hesitate to reach out. Thanks for listening. Thank you for joining us for the All Things Ansys podcast, episode 66. As a reminder, this podcast is not affiliated in any way with Ansys Inc., and the opinions expressed are those of the people on the show only, and not of their current or former employers. For more information, visit www.padtinc.com/blog, and please share your thoughts and questions through an email to podcast@padtinc.com. See you next time.